tuned into the hottest paranormal life show on YouTube, Into the Fringe, where we discuss lost civilizations, UFOs, cryptids, unsolved mysteries, megalithic structures, extraterrestrials, interdimensional portals, time skips, and more. Don't change that channel, because now you are leaving the mainstream and entering into the fringe.
Greetings, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and welcome to another episode of Into the Fringe. Tonight on Into the Fringe, we are joined by author, investigator, and researcher of paranormal humanoids, Albert Rosales, as we dive into his book, Humanoid Encounters, The Others Among Us. Born in Cuba, Albert Rosales migrated to the U.S. in 1966. He had several unusual incidents as a young man while living in Cuba, and such incidents continued as an adult in the U.S. Rosales became interested in unusual phenomena and UFOs at a young age, but soon directed his focus to the crux of the phenomena, the humanoids, entities, extraterrestrials, UFO-nauts, etc. He began collecting data on such encounters from worldwide sources in the late 80s. He has a current database of nearly 30,000 entries, which is updated and corrected daily, and has published 16 books to date. Welcome back, my friend Albert Rosales, to Into the Fringe.
Hi, Gil. Thanks for having me back. I'm happy to be back again into the Fringe. And here's the book for tonight, Humanoid Encounters, years 1985 through 1989. Interesting group of years there. Nice
we
book.
Do have a lot of great cases and a lot of interesting and somewhat spooky cases to let folks know about. I wanted to address actually that issue before we begin. And remember, folks, stay until the end of the show when we'll be giving away an autographed copy of Albert's book from tonight, Humanoid Encounters, The Others Among Us, 1985 to 1989. Albert's books are available on Amazon. And Albert, when are you going to put your database back online?
I want to do that as soon as possible. I've been trying to see some options, see if I can get into a website that will allow me to place my information there, or I just probably gonna have to open up a blog for myself and just enter all the cases there as much as I can. But I want to do that before the year's over. I just doing a lot of new cases and a lot of updates and translations. So I want to get it all together, then I'll start doing that.
And while we're waiting for people to roll in, can you tell us about the different case types, what they mean, where they come from, and which ones you've added?
Well, this is the close encounters of the third kind. That means where an entity has been seen or reported. And then there's different categories of those close encounters of the third kind. Type A, which is when an entity is seen through an opening inside the craft or on top of the craft. Type B, when entities are seen coming in and out of the object, the landed craft or hovering craft or whatever. Type C, That's when there's an object on the ground or nearby, and there's entities nearby, obviously connected to that craft, but are not seen going in and out of the craft. But obviously, they're from that craft. Type D is like when there's, let's say, there's a flap, a wave of UFO sightings in an area, and a humanoid is seen in that area also, not accompanied by a UFO, but it's assumed that he's part of that flap of UFO encounters. Type E is very common nowadays, is where very similar to D, but there doesn't have to be any UFO cases in the area or anything like that. When a humanoid being or more than one are encountered by a witness either at home or out in the field or whatever, and no craft is seen. It's like bedroom visitors, or when you go to the mall, you encounter some kind of black-eyed kids, or you go to a wooded area and you encounter humanoid, strange human, whatever type of humanoid. Now, type G is very very interesting, because that's when there's an abduction reported, and sometimes not really an abduction, there's a voluntary entry into a UFO.
Right.
We have a lot of that nowadays. Seems to be like most of the cases are reference to abduction cases. After that, I added type F. I'm sorry, which is when some kind of psychic connection is reported with a UFO, and the witness not necessarily involving an entity.
Let's maybe a dog man. No, I'm kidding.
Well, when you see let's say a hovering UFO, and there's some kind of telepathic message or something like that, and I have type after that I included type F, then type H, when there's a report of a crash or supposedly a retrieval of a UFO or an entity by mostly government forces or entities. And then I added type X. That's when there's a very real high strange case, which I couldn't really place with the others. Very high strange. It could be related to an entity or not. Paranormal in nature or whatever, but it's very high strange. And lately I have added two other ones, type I. That's when an injury is reported to the witness, or injury or death. So
it is reported to the witness.
Yeah. And then there's another one, which is a U.A, which is unknown unknown animal. Let's say there's some kind of cryptic, but not necessarily a Bigfoot. It's like either a flying. When you see a pterodactyl or something like an animal,
totally
out of place animal,
yeah,
like that, basically.
Okay. And are we ever going to get to hear about the encounters that happened to you as a young man?
Yeah, we could. Let's talk about that next time if you want. I do have I don't know if I sent you. Did I send you my the PDF of a little? I do have a PDF for.
I don't think so.
No. Okay,
Maybe.
I'm gonna send it to you, and then we're gonna talk about it. I got several interesting incidents that occurred to me when I was a kid.
And I want to remind the chat and people watching that Albert often brings the most spooky cases that we have on Into the Fringe, and tonight is no exception. As a matter of fact, I'll issue a trigger warning that if you're easily spooked, you might either want to skip this episode or turn on all the lights.
It's scary.
Get scary. And of course, if you're here and this is your first time, please do subscribe. It's free and it really does help. And of course, you can go to guildstore.com and get all of your Cardinal Sin and Into the Fringe merch there. Let's say hello to some folks that are in the chat here so far. Pat S is here. Hail. Ari is here. Hello. Warachi is here. Hail. Hurt 130 is here. And Pat S says the dogs approve. Ari says, so Men in Black could be classified into any of these categories depending on circumstances?
Usually Men in Black would be classified as type E. If they're seen, if they're seen alone, you find them in your room or in your backyard, or they come to your front door. Or if they're seen inside a UFO, it'd be something different because that probably involves an abduction.
Right. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get to the cases. Let's see here.
Want me to start, or you want to start?
That's what I was just going to ask you.
Want me to start? Sure.
If you want to start, you can.
Okay, the first case is from 1985 at night at a place called Sao Paulo in the Udmurt Russian Republic. It's like an autonomous area, and they're in Russia. So many of those over there. An unusual incident occurred to a local woman, Faina, and her 9-year-old son, Valerie, one night. Faina remembers waking up to a strong light outside the window. A few minutes later, two creatures appeared in the room. These were 2 meters tall and were wearing blue spacesuits. What she thought they were spacesuits. On their heads, they had something like a bulge. The suits themselves had waistbands on the arms and legs, about 10 centimeters in diameter, and glowed according to her, an quote, incomprehensible glow. The faces of the creatures could not be seen. One of them told Faina that they had landed on the roof of the house and told her not to worry. At the same time, the second one was trying to enter the room where the children were sleeping. Excuse me. Frightening, the woman called her 9-year-old son, Valerie, and together they tried to stop the creatures from entering the children's room, the younger children. Faina and her son attempted to push one of them and accidentally moved the suit on his arm and saw on it some kind of light bulbs and what they describe as glands, something shiny. I'm not sure. At this moment, she and her son felt strong fear and felt heat and tingling in the palm of their hands. I guess maybe because they touched the creature. After that, both creatures left the apartment. In the morning, the hands of Faina and her son ached as if burned, but there was no sign of blisters or redness, only some minor swelling. After some time, the memory of the incident began to fade. Eventually, her son's swelling went away, but hairs migrated to her legs and because of this, Faina is currently wheelchair bound. From a Russian source. So don't get too close to humanoids if you don't have to, especially if you're not invited.
For sure. Now, I'm going to ask you to help me with the name of the location before I read this one.
Okay. The next one is in Spain. A place is called Castro Nuño in the province of Valladolid in Spain.
I would have totally murdered that. Okay. So this is in 1985 at nighttime. Cattle rancher Cesar Gomez encountered at a local farm what at first he thought were large trees, but as he approached the figures, he realized that they were really men, very tall, at least 2.8 meters in height, wearing tight-fitting brown leather-like outfits. According to Gomez, they had huge fingers. The entities approached Gomez and asked him several questions and told him secrets that he was not supposed to reveal and that they were all true. Overwhelmed with emotion, Gomez lost consciousness, and when he came to, the giant figures had disappeared. He told the foreman of the farm, Luis Herrero, what had taken place, and at first he was not believed. Herrero confirmed that Gomez seemed very confused and was pale. 4 days later, the dogs in the farm suddenly began to bark and were attempting to hide, emitting pitiful wails as if afraid of something. The incident occurred at the same spot of Gomez's encounter, and Herrero heard terrifying human-like screams. Afraid, he did not check the area to see the origin of the screams. When he walked back to his house, he felt that there was something or someone behind him, but did not dare to look back. His son Jaime, who was in the house, also heard the terrifying screams and had to close the windows. According to Professor Tomás Hijo of the University of Salamanca, there exist traditions in the area related to the guardians of the night and trees, gods of the forest, which resemble the entities described by Gomez. And this source is Jose Antonio Caravaca.
Yes, Caravaca, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is a type E encounter.
Right, entities and pretty weird encounter, if you ask me. Giants in the night, 2.80 meters. That's what, well over 7 feet tall. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Okay, the next one is also 1985 from it was what was still then Czechoslovakia, Prague, near Prague actually. The witness JS was at the time in the army and was on night guard duty at an army base near Prague. Yeah. While doing his usual rounds, he suddenly saw a strange figure about 100 yards ahead. He challenged the figure, and at that moment, the figure, which glowed slightly, moved towards him. The figure did not walk, but seemed to glide just above the ground. Afraid, he started running and then stopped after 50 meters and looked back. He then saw the figure, which was now at a height of about 300 meters and floating away. It then disappeared from sight. So it's basically a flying humanoid. This is from researchers Jitka Lenkova and Ladislav Lenk. They had a little book called Extraterrestrials in Bohemia, which is, I guess, a part of Czechoslovakia or Czech Republic now.
I don't think I have that on my copy.
That Kate's?
Yeah.
Maybe when you edit it or
something. We go from the one in Salamanca to one in Robres, Huesca, Spain. How many in between?
I see that, but in my copy, I have the one from Czechoslovakia, and I have one from Manhattan Beach, California.
Okay. Well, I'll read the one from Spain, and then you can put the other one in there.
It's about 5, actually.
I don't know how I missed all those.
Yeah, I wonder why. Or am I looking at the... I'm sorry. No. Wait. Let me make sure. You know what? You're correct. I was looking at the wrong thing. I was looking at the wrong one. Sorry, but
okay.
At least
we got
no. It was my fault. I was looking at the actual file that I have from 1985,
mm-hmm.
and I'm sorry about that. But there's another case there that we heard about. We didn't know.
Yeah, right, you got a free case. Okay, so let's move along. And so this is in Robres, Huesca, Spain. Date is March 1985. Time 23:30 hours. Ramon Abardia was on his way to the casino in Huesca. After passing the bridge over the canal at about 200 to 300 meters away, he saw a bright glow behind an almond tree grove. Curious, he decided to investigate what it was. He stopped his vehicle and exited the car. He lit a cigarette and approached the clearing to see a strange train wagon-shaped craft on the field at about 100 meters from his position. The object was orange in color and was about 8 meters in length and 3 meters high. I'm
back. I lost my internet there for a second. I don't know what happened.
Happens to the best of us. It was shaped like a perfect parallel pipe. Ramon was confused at how the strange object arrived at its location. There were no access roads anywhere to the location. It had obviously descended from the sky and landed there. Even though the object was luminous, Ramon could see several vertical black lines on its surface. On the top left, it had two red lights within a protruding square-shaped section. Standing next to the object, Ramon saw two human-like figures wearing some sort of glowing yellowish raincoats. The figures who were standing on the left of the object were of normal height. Ramon pointed out that he felt no fear. As he watched, he noticed that the figures had apparently seen him. He watched for about 5 minutes, and strangely and seemingly bored, Ramon walked away, leaving the object and the two humanoids behind. He got into his car and left the area. Later, the next morning, Ramon drove through the area again, and for some reason, he felt fear then of what he had seen. He returned the next day to check the area, but found nothing. And you'll have to say what the source is here.
The source is Spanish researcher Bruno Cardeñosa. He wrote a book called Autopista del Misterio, Highway of Mystery, en busca de los sucesos inexplicables, in search of inexplicable incidents. Well, I translated there. Yeah, Mystery Highway, in search of the unexplained.
And this is a type C.
Yeah, because the creatures were, the entities were seen near the object.
And it seems like he was compelled to walk away. Doesn't it seem like that to you?
That's happened before. All of a sudden you lose interest and you walk away and you forget what you have seen and you don't remember till later. All right, the next one, we go to Italy, a place called Piancavallo Aviano in the province of Pordenone, Italy. April 14, 1985. The time was in the evening. A young couple drove into the mountain ski resort of Piancavallo in a heavy storm. With much, but a curious yellow-green fog suddenly descended on their car, and they noticed that the snow had locally melted around the vehicle, I guess. Still puzzling at this, the car engine failed. As they were on a downward hill, they were able to coast a little way, and their headlights still functioned. Through these, they picked up two strange creatures that just stepped out from the bushes right in front of their car. The entities were over 6 feet and had silvery suits on their bodies. Curiously, these were disproportionately wide, what they were wearing. The couple raced into a nearby village and was driven home by friends. When they later collected their stricken car with a tow truck, it started first time without problems. At nearby San Carino, a witness saw a saucer-like object with a greenish yellow dome on top. It dropped from the sky to a very low height and then started to move in a jerky manner before streaking away. So, I don't have a copy of that book. I used to, I believe. I'm not sure if I do or not. I'm sorry. I just have this array of books here that I have to fix that. But this type of case is type D. There were saucers seen in the area, plus these two entities. There could be a type E also. Yeah.
And I apologize. There seems to be a UFO or a helicopter hovering directly over my house. So if you hear that sort of low noise, it's a plane or something flying around my house. I thought originally it was my neighbor who has a really loud muffler, but it's not going away. So I apologize about that. Okay, the next location is Cap Corse, Haute Corse in Corsica, France. The date is 1986. The time is 1:00 a.m. MX, a local stonemason, was driving slowly on a narrow, winding road that led to the hamlet. The sky was clear because there was a full moon and there was no wind. It was a weekday. As he came out of a bend, he sees 3 men coming down the road. They didn't seem very tall. He estimated their height at about 1.5 meters. They seemed to be dressed identically in dark coveralls and full face helmets. His first reaction was to believe that the men were bikers, although they actually looked more like cosmonauts. At that point, the road is bordered on one side by a steep mountain slope and on the other by a ravine, so it could not be a question of bikers or campers. When he passed them, the strange characters continued on their way without looking at the witness or making the slightest gesture. If they would have been in some type of difficulty, they would have definitely signaled for the witness to stop. It seemed to the witness that the one walking in front had something in his hand. A lawnmower can't be that loud.
Oh yeah, I'm back. It's some kind of lost my internet again. It's a weird night
Happens
today.
to the best of us.
All right, go ahead.
So the witness looked in the rear view mirror and he saw that the short bikers continued on their way without looking back. Intrigued and not very reassured, he continued on his way and stopped a little higher in a clearance area from where he had a bird's eye view on the whole valley. He turned off his headlights and followed the progress of the three strangers along the road. For a moment, he felt like turning around to get a closer look, but he thought against it. After a few minutes, the three figures branched off to the right, then left the road and took a small path that runs along a stream leading to a small valley. At this moment, the witness felt an anxiety rising in him for no apparent reason. He was unable to take the wheel again and remained frozen, looking toward the place where the entities had disappeared. Then, a time that he estimated to have been about 15 minutes passed, and he was still at the spot when he saw, emerging from the small valley, a kind of dark mass surrounded by a scintillating red-orange light like an electric bulb. The object rose vertically 100 meters, then turned obliquely and disappeared in a few seconds. The witness went back into his vehicle and drove off. After that, he thought he would not be able to sleep that night, but as soon as he got to bed, he fell into a deep sleep.
Yeah, this is from researcher from Corsica, French, Christophe Cagnoni. UFOs in the sky over Corsica.
And Albert, is there any way to firm up vague times like this, 1986 morning, or is that as close as we can get?
Most of the time, I try to get an exact date or at least a month, but in many occasions, it's not available because the researcher spoke to the witness years after the encounter, and the witness does not recall the exact date, and they only have the year and when it happened. So sometimes that's all you can get. Sometimes you can't even get a year, and I don't like to include those because I like to have at least an approximate date, at least a year. I could work with a year, but I prefer to have a month, year, and or a day.
Well, let's say hello to some more people who have joined. Rui is here. Hello. Ari says Ents, like from The Lord of the Rings. That's a freaky case, he said. Canadian Spider Man is here. Hello. Greetings. Mr. M.H. is here. Hail, Cardinal and Albert Rosales. Respect to you both. I'm at work, so I'll be dipping in and out of the chat. Hail to the chat. Hail to Mr. M.H. Nemesis of Eden is in the house. Today is a fine day for learning. Hope everyone is doing well. Back at you. And Canadian Spider-Man mentions, please, if you are interested in this, buy Mr. Rosales' books. And he gives the link to your author page on Amazon, which, of course, you can find just by searching.
Thank you.
Herc 130 says, not helicopters, Vogons wanting to put in an interstellar bypass. You might want to put a bag over your head and lay down. Why? Will that help? And keep tight hold of your towel. They are watching. Okay, let's go ahead and get back to the cases. And
the next one is it's from a place called Ulyanovsk in Russia. Again, this is 1986 in the morning. And the witness, this is from the book Jacques Ballet book, UFO Chronicles of the Soviet Union. The witness was alone at home, getting ready to go to work when someone rang his doorbell. He opened the door and was confronted by a 7-foot-tall man wearing silver coveralls and large boots. In a low, gruff voice, the intruder told the witness that he was an alien and needed food. The witness gave him some of his grocery. The man left on foot, carrying the items wrapped in old newspapers. The witness proceeded to his job, but he felt an urge to return home early. Upon doing so, he found his pantry ransacked, all the food items missing. Aliens were hungry. It's kind of weird. And like I said, this is from Jacques Ballet, UFO Chronicles of the Soviet Union, citing Russian researcher Emil Bakurin from the files of the Commission of Anomalous Phenomena in Russia. So it was investigated, so it must have been a real case. It's just one of those that is out there. Weird.
Yeah, high strangeness, indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give this one a shot, Albert, but I'm probably going to murder it.
Go ahead.
Location, Queltahues, Cajon de Maipo, Chile.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah, that one's hard for me to pronounce, though.
Okay.
Queltahues, Cajon de Maipo. There you go. Yeah.
Well, okay, that was better. Okay, so this one is in 1986 during the daytime. Beatriz, 18, was spending the weekend at her family's resort home in the area. It was a bright, sunny day, which prompted her to go out and explore the nearby woods. As Beatriz trekked through the woods, she came upon a strange person who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere, standing less than 2 meters from her position. The figure stood there staring at Beatriz in silence. Beatriz looked around, hoping there was somebody else around to witness what she was seeing, but there was nobody. She could see the person clearly and described him as a man about 1.7 to 1.8 meters in height, blonde-haired, with large greenish eyes and a very pointed chin, giving his face an extraordinary configuration. He also had an exceedingly small mouth. Beatriz did not see any ears, only golden blonde hair, and his skin was extremely pale. His arms and fingers were longer than normal. Suddenly, Beatriz heard noises coming from the nearby woods, as if several persons were approaching, which made Beatriz turn around to look. She then immediately turned to look at the figure again, but he was nowhere to be seen. According to Beatriz, she had seen strange lights in the same area before. She reported strange after effects, namely that her menstrual blood turned green for her next period. I've never heard of that before.
When I was here locally in South Florida, there were back in the 90s, I was involved in several investigations with the chupacabra thing. That was back then it started in 95, 96. And I went to a house where there was several dead goats. And this is in the outskirts of the city. And one of the goats had a couple punctures and it was bleeding, but whatever was coming out wasn't red. It was green colored. It was like a green liquid coming out of the goat, which is weird.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Thought I'd throw that in there. Okay, the next one from a place that you don't hear too many cases coming from, but there are, is a place called Encamp, Andorra. Andorra is a tiny country there between France and Spain there in the Alps. Spring of 1986, in the evening, the witness was Marielle R., was visiting the area of ancient dolmens with some friends. Dolmens are like ancient rock formations or structures by, the ancient people that lived in the area.
Mm-hmm.
The group decided to rest for a while, and Marielle remained sitting on a rock next to two of her friends. Soon she began to hear what sounded like pebbles falling on the ground near a dolmen, one of the dolmens. She got up and approached the dolmen, and saw two little men standing with their backs to her. As she approached the figures, they suddenly turned around, looked at her, and ran into the bushes. Marielle then called to the rest of her friends, and they searched the woods, but did not find anything. She described the little men as human-like, with penetrating black eyes, dark skin, with very long hair as compared to their stature. They wore tight-fitting, light-colored coveralls. And this is from researchers Marisol and Jose Antonio Roldan, Revista Enigmas. It's weird because in a lot of these, like Stonehenge and this type of ancient sites, there's been a lot of incidents in those. For some reason, these are like maybe portals. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay, so this one is in El Tabo, Valparaiso province, Chile. Date March 1986, time 3 a.m. The main witness, a woman called Yuli, was in her bedroom sleeping peacefully when she got up to check on and covered her young son, who was sleeping peacefully in his crib. Later, she went back to her bed and tried to go back to sleep. However, as she tossed and turned, she noticed that the bedroom door was now halfway open, but thought nothing of it. However, when she looked again, she noticed two white-skinned figures similar to humans. They were not very tall. They were very handsome, and she also noticed that one appeared to be younger than the other one. Despite the strangeness of the situation, she felt no fear. She just stared at the figures for a few seconds and then went back to sleep. The next day, she mentioned to her family what she had seen, and her niece, who slept in the room adjacent to the witness, told her that she had seen a bright light shining through the top of the door at around 3 or 4 a.m. Around the same time, several witnesses on a nearby beach reported seeing a bright object submerging itself in the waters of the coast. And this source is Freddie Alexis.
Yeah, from Chile. He's a researcher over there, and that I have correspondence with. And this case could have been a type D because there were UFOs still in the area, so or a type E, bedroom visitor. So it's a kind of a gray line there. Okay, the next one we're going to go to Argentina, a place called Santa Ana de los Guacaras. I know you wanted that one. Corrientes, Argentina. Date, I got an exact date here, March 17, 1986, between 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. A local farmer, his name Rito Melgarejo, was returning home from the mill. The name of the mill was Ingenio Primer Correntino. And in the area very, very close to his home, a powerful but silent beam of light suddenly illuminates him from behind. It then flies over him and lands on a nearby large puddle of water. In the darkness, he sees two short humanoids, the size of 6 to 8-year-old boys, descend from the landed object. The two short beings then signal the witness, beckoning him to come with them, possibly inviting him on board the craft. However, Melgarejo resists, turns around, walking quickly away from the craft and the beings. After some time, he turns around again and notices that the beings are gone, and the object is now just a small bright dot of light in the sky. He reported experiencing a terrific headache soon after the incident, which caused him difficulty in finding his house. The craft was described as about 6 by 4 meters, and the humanoids about 1.2 meters in height, wearing dark coveralls, and their skin appeared to be gray in color. A circular yellowish area, there you go, was found on the grass, and also a dead flattened bird that appeared to be mummified. And that's the image of the humanoid that he encountered. And this from a UFO group in Argentina, Federación Correntina de Ovniología. I wonder what would you do if they invited you in?
I was going to ask you the very same question.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll probably go if they invite me. If they don't abduct me, then I guess they're not that bad.
I'd go in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Either way. They could abduct me, they could ask me, either way. I'd go in a heartbeat and get off this filthy planet. And we'll see why shortly. Okay, so this one is in Afghanistan. The exact location is not given. It's in 1987, time unknown. Very specific, I know.
Yeah, I know.
A Soviet military man who had been involved in a fierce battle with local partisans had been severely wounded and was suffering from shock, very confused and lying on the ground in a mountainous ravine. He was suffering terrific pain from a leg wound, and he had lost his Kalashnikov machine gun. Even in severe pain, he grabbed an F1 hand grenade in an attempt to blow himself up and take a couple of the enemy with him, aware that if he were captured by the Mujahideen, he would suffer severe torture. Suddenly, he saw a light descend from the sky, which, after approaching his position, he was able to see that it was circular, apparently an alien spacecraft. This shiny disc-shaped object hovered over the battlefield. Other soldiers, as well as some of the enemy on the other side of the ravine, also saw the shiny disc-shaped object, which was now floating low over the ground. Suddenly, a cone-shaped beam of light was projected from the object, and the wounded soldier was literally beamed up inside the craft. He then felt his body levitating, and soon he appeared to be in a strange circular room with white walls and no shadows. His first thought was that he was already dead and that he was in heaven. But soon he realized that he was still alive. Strangely, he was no longer in pain. In the room, he saw several strange people that communicated with him telepathically. They then placed him on a shiny operating table surrounded by unknown high-tech devices positioned above and on the walls. After examining his wounds and his inner organs, the images he could partially see on a big screen above him, the aliens told him telepathically, "We can cure all your wounds, but we can't save your leg, so we must amputate your leg." In the last I can't speak today. In the last moment before losing consciousness, the witness asked the aliens why they could not save his leg, and they responded by saying that even with their advanced technology, they simply could not restore his leg, and the only option was amputation, or he will not survive. The witness then blacked out. 3 hours later, the witness again found himself lying on the ravine in the battlefield. He was able to remember everything that happened, but was in shock. When a medical team finally reached the witness, his leg had already been amputated, but it was almost completely healed. It looked like the surgical procedure had been performed over a year ago. A puzzled medical orderly asked the witness how that could happen. The witness answered truthfully and explained that he had been taken by extraterrestrials. The medical team decided that the witness was delirious or hallucinating. They put him on a stretcher and transported him in an Mi-8 helicopter to a field hospital. There, senior military doctors were also puzzled as to the witness's condition and his missing leg, and when asked again what had occurred, the witness again bravely told the story about being taken up by extraterrestrials. Again, he was not believed, even though the doctors could not explain his condition. He was then transported to Tashkent in Soviet territory, and after staying a month in the hospital, he was discharged from the Soviet army with an extraordinarily small pension. The man told the story to a friend who finally leaked the story to investigators.
Weird, huh? I guess he suffered from because of what happened to him. And, if we're to believe the incident, this is by Russian researchers Natalia and Leonid Teretiev. They used to publish a newsletter, UFO newsletter called The Secret Doctrine. And Anton Anfalov also sent me information on the case.
I noticed it mentions Crimea.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Oh yeah,
Mentioned
yeah.
Crimea.
That's the newspaper was published in Simferopol, Crimea,
Mhm.
in Ukraine.
Yeah,
No, I didn't say the Ukraine. I said Ukraine.
got it.
All right. The next one, we go to France. We have a location, Pradels Cabards, in the Audi region. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing it right. France. We have an exact date of April 27, 1987, in the afternoon. Having left his parked car, the witness went out for a walk in an area called Montagne Nord, which he translated to Black Mountain. He was on his way to the hamlet of Les Ues. The path was blocked by a tractor, and at approximately 50 meters before his crossing, he sees a figure also heading towards the crossing. At this point, the witness did not note anything out of the ordinary, but when the individual crosses the path ahead, the witness is surprised by the amplitude of his strides. Other elements, such as the height and clothing, appeared to him thereafter. Curious, he decides to follow the strange individual and then makes the following observations. The strange individual is pushing a sort of cart 2 meters long, 0.8 meters high, more or less circular in shape, and red-orange in color. Excuse me. A rolling noise was heard, attesting contact with the road. The figure was about 3 meters or 3.5 meters in height, giant, and was wearing a transparent mask with a brown colored structure covering his head, the contours of which the witness could not distinguish. The head and shoulders of the peculiar individual were covered by a veil or by a balaclava of shiny silver color. The edges of the veil blew in the wind. The rest of his body was covered with a slightly transparent and silvery gray gabardine, which shone like the sun, and through which he could make out legs covered with gray pants. The legs were thin, but the calves and knees were abnormally large. The shoulders were narrow, comparable to the waist, which made the witness think that could have possibly been a woman. Excuse me. The left arm swayed harmoniously with the gait. The witness has no memory that he has no memory that allows him information on the hands. His large feet were covered with dark shoes. Realizing that he was being followed, the individual accelerates while pushing the cart. The witness notices that the gait of the stranger changes. Long strides become shorter but faster. The individual trots now. The path crosses a grove, then there is a slight curve. For a brief moment, the individual disappears from sight of the witness, hidden by the trees. After the grove, there is a perfectly clear area of more than 800 meters, devoid of any trees, made up of meadows and fields. Upon arriving at the end of the grove, the witness glances to his right of the road and sees the entity trotting away. The witness briefly turns away, and when he looks back again, the stranger had vanished. The witness briefly turns away, and when he had vanished. The witness continues to walk and counts 165 steps to the suspected point of disappearance. On the right, as on the left of the road, the meadows are perfectly treeless for at least 100 meters. It was necessary to cover a distance of 600 meters to arrive at the edge of a nearby forest. The individual and the cart had literally vanished in a fraction of a second, with no shelter allowing for effective concealment. The witness then inspects the edge of the road, but finds no suspicious traces. After 5 minutes, the witness continues his way on the road and meets an oncoming tractor. He questions the driver, but the latter has met no one. And upon arriving at the intersection, he also questions a parked motorist without success. This from French researchers Denise Lacanel and Theodore Revel and Jean Castro. They had a group called Midi Pyrenees group, UFO group.
Uh-huh.
So this guy was very tall. There's so many incidents in which the entities are described as very tall, giant, and we don't hear that too much. We only hear about the little tiny grays.
So far, we've got lots of coveralls. We've got giants, and we're going to have some more stuff coming up. So we'll go ahead and move on to Gouda in the Netherlands. The date is the summer of 1987 between 2 and 4 a.m. The 20-year-old witness was riding his bicycle going home after having spent some time downtown with friends in a bar. His parents lived about 15 minutes by bicycle from the town center. He was riding along, and some 2 to 3 minutes before he would have arrived at his parents' house, he had to cross a road, a separated bike path, which he had to go up in the wrong direction for some 20 meters in order to get to a small wooden bridge he had to take to cross a small canal. This road is illuminated at night by a typical yellow sodium lamp, like a street light. As a result of this, it was not completely dark around the bridge. At the other side of this short and small bridge, there is a walkway continuing ahead from the end of the bridge. To the direct left of the bridge, there is a field of grass bordering the canal, which even more to the left opens out onto a pond. Behind this field of grass, there is a multi-story apartment building, mostly for the elderly. To the right of the bridge's end, there are houses. Altogether, it is a residential area, a good neighborhood. When entering the bridge, he noticed some squatted figures directly on the end at the water side. 3 of them were looking at the water or at the ducks sleeping on the water. He was incredibly surprised and stopped his bike on the middle of the bridge. His immediate thought was, who the hell is sitting here at the water side looking at the water or the sleeping ducks in the middle of the night? At the moment he finished that thought, one of the little figures at the water side looked up at the witness and scared the living daylights out of him because its large eyes were emanating a soft tone white light. Remember that for later on. The witness realized that this was something completely different from what he had originally thought. At that moment, the being that was looking directly at him told him telepathically that there was no need to be afraid, move on and go home, and you will not remember this. Strangely, the witness did exactly as he was told, almost as if under control. He rode to his parents' place, parked his bike in the shed, and went to bed. He slept well, but after he woke up, he began to remember what had occurred that night. The creatures were like small children, maybe 1.5 meters in height, with heads slightly bigger than normal children, and they wore dark clothing. No other details could be seen. The one that looked directly at the witness had relatively large eyes, which shone a soft tone of white light.
Creepy.
Very creepy, Albert. You bring the creepy, I gotta tell you.
Oh, that one is surely is. The next one, not so much, but interesting. All right, this is Raymond Keller, Mount Shasta, California, summer 1987, daytime. Ray Keller and a group from the Utah chapter of Outer Space International Research and Investigation Society were on a UFO pilgrimage to Mount Shasta in Northern California. Mount Shasta is a lot of stuff going on there. Okay, so he said the group chose this site because many reported sightings of UFOs in the area. That's what I said. One legend says that the mountain is hollow, a super garage for spaceships or a temple for outer space visitors. While he and the others were hiking beyond the tree line, a woman appeared as the hikers rounded a boulder near the peak of Mount Shasta. She was a lady with red hair, about 5 feet 6 inches tall, and she was wearing a white jumpsuit. He was bare up there. There were no trees that she could have been hiding behind. He said the other pilgrims identified themselves as part of a UFO group, and the woman said, I know, I know why you're here. That's what she said. Also, he did not want to elaborate on what the woman said. She talked to them for about 2 hours and let them take her picture. The photographic evidence of the outer space visitor is in Utah with one of the members, according to Keller. As the group was leaving and turned to wave goodbye, the woman had disappeared. And this is from Donna Jones' journal, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And is, it's Mount Shasta. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens there, disappearances,
A lot of weird stuff.
encounters. So you never know. I wish they would have published a picture of supposedly of the lady, but who knows?
People have seen things flying into Mount Shasta, flying out of Mount Shasta, on top of Mount Shasta. Apparently, Mount Shasta is a very spiritual area where people will hike up. It's a considerable mountain.
Well, according to the Native Americans in the area, there's certain places in Mount Shasta that they warn people not to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of disappearances, like I mentioned, in the area.
Yeah, especially of the missing 411 variety that Dave
Pilates talks about.
Yeah.
But this one here was a positive encounter. Anyway. Yeah.
Okay, we'll give this one a go here. This one is near Ojate, Burgos, Spain.
Ochate, Burgos.
Ochate.
Okay. Yeah. Ochate is an abandoned town. It's been abandoned for years, and it's kind of a weird place. Paranormal events have happened there. So go ahead.
Okay. So summer of 1987, time late night. Investor Mikel Colomanero was testing some new radio equipment and had driven away to an isolated location from the rest of the researchers in order to test the equipment more thoroughly. As he approached the trail that led to Ochate?
Yeah, Ochate.
He noticed that the equipment began to malfunction inexplicably, so he stopped the vehicle and decided to rejoin the others. As he turned around, he noticed two entities approaching his vehicle on the roadway. According to Colomanero, the entities were no more than 3 meters in height and were dressed in dark, tight-fitting suits with lighter stripes. As the figures walked by the car, he was able to see their heads, which he described as oval without any distinguishing features like eyes, mouths, etc. A bizarre detail of this incident was that on a cassette that Colomanero had in his vehicle, the words "Yo sí estoy," loosely translated "Yes, I am," were clearly recorded without any logical explanation. Colomanero became so distraught that he destroyed the tape. Now, as I've said before, Albert, you always bring the spooky. There's no doubt about it. What do you have just thought-wise about this?
Well, like I told you, the area is well known for unusual incidents, encounters with beings, even disappearances in that area there. And this is one of those instances. The entities were again 3 meters in height, giants. And then the thing about the cassette tape, that's an EVP if you think about it.
Could be,
electrical voice phenomena. So who knows? But there's a lot of recorded stuff there in that area there.
Yeah, it's an abandoned, spooky area.
It's been abandoned for years, right before the Civil War there in Spain. There's many towns in Spain that's been abandoned like that. A lot of them.
Kind of like in Virginia, old coal towns, stuff like that.
Yeah. Abandoned, and then this weird stuff happens there. Maybe that's why they were abandoned. It's my turn? Oh, okay. So, yeah. Next, we go to Brazil, a place called Guarulhos, Sao Paulo, Brazil. Okay, June 1987 in the afternoon, 12-year-old Ariel C. Jr. was hanging out alone in a forested area near his school. There was a lake in the thickest part of the forest, and that's where he will usually sit on a large box by the water. One day he was looking up and saw something really weird gliding about 30 feet above him, then landing on the other side of the lake. It was an immense creature, not a bird, and it looked like it was brown in color. His body resembled a mixture of a bat and an owl. So it could have been a gargoyle type. The head was shaped like a trapezoid. He had a kind of membranous tail and wings, which appeared to be frayed at the edges, like old fabric. He thought it could have been 2 to 4 meters tall. Another gigantic creature. For a second, the creature covered what little sunlight snuck in through the foliage, and everything went dark. The witness quickly left the area and did not return to the location to search for any traces. Weird. Another weird encounter.
Yeah. Okay, so this one is in Croton Falls, New York. Date June 19th, 1987. The time 23:30 hours. Two married couples were returning home from New York City when they decided to take a shortcut through a dirt road near a local reservoir. They crossed a bridge, and then the car stalled and the headlights went out. They were unable to restart the vehicle. As they all sat in the car, they heard the sound of people walking to their right. One of the witnesses grabbed a flashlight and went to investigate. Scanning the brush area, he yelled as he saw 3 4-foot-tall humanoids standing in a row nearby. They had exceptionally large heads. He pointed the flashlight at the humanoids, and their eyes glowed bright orange in color. The beings then ran down a hill, apparently disappearing into a hole on the side of the hill. At that point, a large triangular-shaped craft with bright yellow lights appeared over the road. It then hovered silently above the area where the beings had vanished and shone a red beam of light on the ground that made 3 sweeping circles. A period of missing time was also reported. Now, this source is Philip J. Imbrogno, UFO Universe.
Right.
And, of course, since then, Philip J. Imbrogno has been caught faking his credentials, but that doesn't mean that he's not a good researcher, or at least was reporting correct witness testimony at the time.
I corresponded with him, and he seems like maybe he kind of exaggerated about his service in the military. Yeah. But I think he still is, or was, I don't know if he's still doing it, a good researcher, and he had a lot of good reports that he from that area, especially Connecticut, New York, especially from the 1980s, when the wave over there from the...
he co-wrote the book Night Siege with J. Allen Hynek. Yeah.
So he's a good researcher. Maybe, we all exaggerate a little bit.
Well, I can't say that I've never faked something on my resume to get a job, but when the information came out about his faking his credentials, people more or less kind of let him go. And my understanding is that he hasn't really done very much since then.
No, but I got all his books, and I really enjoyed his books. It has a lot of interesting information.
Yeah.
And I still think it's a shame what happened. Doesn't mean he's a hoaxer.
Right.
I don't know. Anyway, the next case, we go back to Spain. Higuera, a place called Higuera de la Serena in the province of Badajoz, Spain. June 26, 1987. 2:30 a.m. Three men, Alejo Gonzalez, Adolfo Jose Davila, and Jacinto Tamayo, were hunting in an isolated area when suddenly all three turned around in unison to observe an extraordinarily strong light that had suddenly appeared in the sky. It resembled a yellowish full moon. As they stood debating the nature of the object, it suddenly shot towards them at vertiginous speed. It then stopped above some nearby olive trees. The luminous sphere was at least 15 meters in diameter, and it began emitting a loud whistling sound that kept increasing in volume. Terrified, the men watched as two very tall, heavy-set man-like figures suddenly appear next to the object. Again, we're talking about tall humanoids. These two figures began moving towards the men using very quick and long strides. They were dark in color and appeared featureless. The men ran until they reached a nearby arroyo and then hid behind some bushes. Soon they saw the luminous sphere, still emitting the loud whistling sound, ascend and disappear into the sky. Traces were found where the luminous sphere had landed. Tree leaves were found yellowed and as if dehydrated at the location of the landing. So I would have ran too if I see something like that coming towards me.
Another very spooky case.
Now the next one is very weird also.
Did you want to mention the source that this one came from first?
Oh yeah, the source is Iker Jimenez. He's a well-known Spanish investigator. From his book Encuentros, la historia de los ovnis in Spain, encounters in the history of encounters with UFOs in the history of Spain.
Gotcha.
He wrote a large volume.
And what's a Type C encounter again?
When an entity or humanoid is seen near the object, not necessarily going in and out of it, but maybe standing next to it, like these two were seen standing next to the craft.
So this one is several miles off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean.
The East Coast,
yeah. The date 1988 during the afternoon. Professional scuba diver Robert Foster was diving alone looking for mysterious undersea formations when he noticed a disturbance in the water. When he turned to look, he saw a vague, shadowy figure slashing toward him. All around him, the water had begun to churn wildly, and clouds of sediment were swirling. As the creature rushed toward him, it appeared to undulate rather than glide. When the fast-moving form got to within 20 yards of him, he noticed something odd about it. Appendage-like arms seemed to be reaching out toward him, and at the end of each arm appeared to be sharply taloned hands. He then saw the creature in full view. He saw an unmistakable pair of breasts, long flowing hair, smooth skin, and scaled tail from the waist down. It appeared to be half woman, half fish. Foster said, quote, "I've never seen such evil hate in the eyes of any human or animal before," close quote. Before the creature could reach him, Foster shot up toward the surface and was able to scamper over the side of his craft to safety. He never saw the creature again. And I have to interject here that I wouldn't ever want to see that creature again either.
Me neither. It's from researcher E. Randall Floyd. He's written several books about Southern mysteries. This book is called Great Southern Mysteries, one of his first books. Too bad he didn't specify the location. I guess he wasn't allowed to. But in that area there, Atlantic side of Florida, there's a lot of weird stuff going on there.
You can curse on my channel. You can say shit or whatever. That's fine. But yeah, there is some really weird shit that happens out there. I mean, that's the Bermuda Triangle, right?
Right, and underwater formations of maybe what appears to be sunken cities too.
And I noticed that you had commented, I guess the Orion-based Greys are not the only unfriendly humanoids out there.
Yeah, I wonder why she was so upset. Maybe because we've been destroying her habitat. Who knows? Maybe
Yeah,
that's why she was
that's
pissed off.
that's a good guess.
Yeah, that's what I don't know. So it's my turn. Okay, we go. Next we go to Argentina, a place called Barrio de la Serena in the province Mar del Plata, Argentina. Early January 1988, time 1 a.m. Two friends, Leonardo Fuster and Gabriel, both 18, were leaving a family reunion, and were walking along on the street when they started seeing a white glow coming from the nearby Peralta Ramos woods. The light was about 100 meters from them and was performing circular and zigzag movements at very high speed and in complete silence. Some surprise, the two friends did not stop and kept walking until a beam of light suddenly illuminated them. Then a thick mist or fog formed while the light receded. They then witnessed the appearance of a small entity. Terrified, Gabriel grabbed his jacket to cover his face as he didn't want to see anything else, while Leonardo remained looking at the entity. Uh, the strange entity was only about 50 to 60 centimeters in height, brown in color with two square-shaped eyes, red in color. Leonardo didn't see any arms or legs, only the eyes. It was floating above the ground and suddenly approached to within 3 meters from the witnesses. Gabriel yelled out to Leonardo, "Do not look at it anymore." And at that very same moment, there was a puff of multicolored smoke, and the entity vanished. However, the beam of white light reappeared again and blinded both witnesses, who were briefly able to see a large circular silvery object shaped like an oval, which with illuminated windows. The beam then receded back into the object, and behind the windows they both could see several dark entities moving back and forth. The UFO was hovering at about 10 meters above the ground when suddenly it emitted a bright flash and, and at high speed it flew away towards the park. A buzzing sound was also heard. Both witnesses were then stunned to see that the time was already 5:30 a.m. So they started at 1, so 4 hours have passed. Leonardo later suffered from stomach pains and vomiting. So they never went and they never did. There were never regrets hypnotically, and it seems that it could have been an abduction since because of the missing time. And this is from researcher Carlos Ferguson, UFO landings in Argentina. He wrote a huge volume of a book with detailing a lot of incidents there in Argentina.
And I noticed that you put type C or G. Why is
Yeah,
that?
because there was a missing 5 hour period of missing time, so it could have been an abduction, which never researched or examined.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next case. I'm going to murder this one too. Molindero area, El Yunque, Puerto Rico. Date January 1988. Time 1930 hours. On a cold and foggy night, several university students camping in the area heard noises coming from the nearby brush. One of them, Raymond, shone his flashlight at the area where the noise was coming from. The group felt that there was someone there, and when they looked, they saw a figure, a man-like figure, standing in front of them. The figure was staring fixedly at the group, and the startled group stared right back at it. They both stared at each other for a few minutes in silence. Strangely, the students felt no fear. They described the figure as about 5'4" to 5'5" in height. It had a normal human body, well built and slender. The figure had long facial features with a pointy chin, but was otherwise normal. They could see its lips, but could not distinguish the color of the skin. It seemed to be a pale tone, the mouth just a small opening. The eyes were the strangest of all. They lacked irises, with only black horizontal lines, otherwise a dark brown color. The eyes were oval in shape and had a little larger than normal human eyes. But despite its strange eyes, his stare was tender, according to the witnesses, just like someone staring at a young child. The group could not take their eyes off of the figure. The figure lacked eyebrows or lashes, and it had a very small nose, consisting of only 2 small holes. It was unlike a human nose. His hair, if it was hair, was very strange. It seemed straw-like and somewhat curly, light in color, seemingly uncombed and unwashed. His arms and fingers were normal, and his skin was a mustard yellow in color. The figure wore a one-piece coverall, metallic in color, but not silvery, a bit darker like lead. One of the students, Jose, yelled out something about how strange the eyes were. At this point, Raymond, the one holding the camera, panicked and ran into the tent, followed by the rest of the group.
Holding the flashlight. He was holding the flashlight.
Yeah. And they did not see the creature depart. And this source is Jorge Martin Miranda, Puerto Rico.
Again, that's an area there, El Yunque, Puerto Rico. There's like an incredible amount of incidents there throughout the years. Very little known, but there's a lot of stuff going on there. Okay, so we go all the way to the West Coast, a place called Brentwood in California, January 1988, late night. The witness, Judy McMillan, was reading in bed with her boyfriend sleeping next to her when she noticed the figure of a small man standing on the right side of the bed by her boyfriend. The being was about 4 feet tall, with grayish tan skin that was very rough texture. He had a large head with a pointed chin and large, dark, slanted eyes, similar to the guy before. The witness attempted to scream, but found herself totally paralyzed. She also felt a tingling sensation through her body. The being reached across the bed over to her boyfriend. Reached across the bed over her boyfriend and attempted to touch her. His hands had 4 fingers with webbing in between them and long fingernails. In her mind, she heard the words, "Do not worry, I won't hurt you. I just want to examine you." Just before the being touched her, the boyfriend Justo, he moved and tossed in bed. This apparently startled the little being that then jumped back and disappeared in a white flash of light. Very weird case. This is from Barry Taft and the old UFO magazine, volume 4, number 1.
Now, in this next case, I'm going to need some help from Ari because the location is Commetigi, Cape Town area, South Africa. Kometjie, Cape Town, South Africa. Date, January 1988. Time, midnight. The 5-year-old main witness, who shared a bed with his sister, who also witnessed the same thing, remembers being awake but not waking up, and his room being filled with the brightest light he'd seen. He looked at his sister, who was also awake, and together they peeked through the curtains at the light that was coming from their yard. What I saw was not shocking, but more mysterious. He saw 4 to 5 people in white glowing suits with what looked like a helmet and a visor. He couldn't see their faces. They were about 4 to 5 feet tall. They carried what he could only describe as metal detectors, which they were moving from side to side. The beings were standing in a row and making the side-to-side swing motion. There was a glowing and bluish light coming from the end of the detectors. Then a voice spoke to him telepathically, which said, "It's okay." We are not here to hurt you. You can go back to sleep." At this point, he felt pure peace and safety. His sister looked at him, and he looked at her, and they went to sleep. For years, he thought it was a dream until he was about 16 when he told his sister about the dream. She remembers seeing at least 10 of these beings, not only in their yard, but in the whole neighborhood. She did not hear the voice, but remembers feeling really calm and peaceful. And this one is a MUFON investigation, correct?
A MUFON case, and also from a South Africa group called UFO RSA. They also have the case. They investigated the case. Interesting case.
Yeah.
I guess, but it wasn't scary, but interesting. Now this next one here is kind of strange.
It really, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Next one is from San Pedro Sula in Honduras, Central America, February 4th, 1988, night. A local couple were inconsolable as they reported that their 2-year-old son had been taken by extraterrestrials. Okay, they reported that their son was taken by a 7-foot-tall entity with bright yellow eyes. The couple, Louis and Maria, reported that they were with their young son in the rear patio when they watched in horror as a large sphere-shaped object descended close to the ground near them. Immediately after, two humanoids, human-like in appearance and about 7 feet tall, grabbed their son and they went back to their ship. The local police seemed skeptical. Yeah, no wonder, as they think that the boy, named Pepe Munoz, was abducted by a gang of child kidnappers known to operate in the region. However, the couple insisted on the version of events, and apparently the incident was also witnessed by stunned neighbors. Luis Munoz, 31, the father, told reported that he had given their version of events on several occasions, but they still refused to take them seriously. Maria and Louis reported that where the object had landed or hovered, there were strange marks on the ground, which the police refused to consider. The couple attempted to aid their son, but suddenly they found themselves paralyzed and unable to speak or yell out. According to them, the craft was round, with white lights on its sides, and circled over their son, Pepe, before landing close to the boy. A hatch opened, and two beings exited the object. They had sparkling yellow eyes. The couple watched helplessly as the two figures ran towards their son and grabbed him. They could see their son crying hysterically as the figures took him inside the craft. The object then rose into the air and disappeared at terrific speed. Okay? The local police insisted that they were investigating the case and were checking all angles of the incident. Apparently, bright lights had been seen circling the area around the same time that the boy was taken. Others saw a disc-shaped object flying rapidly over the area. However, the police remained skeptical as to the parents' version of the events. To this day, little Pepe Munoz has not been located or found.
That's really, really fucking spooky, Albert.
And this is from a guy, an investigator over there in Central America, Oscar Rafael Padilla Lara. He wrote an encyclopedia of encounters in Central America, and I exchanged information with him, and he told me about this incident.
Volume 17?
Yeah, he wrote about 20 volumes.
Wow, he's almost as prolific as you are.
And these books are almost impossible to get. We exchanged a couple of books, so I got a couple of those books from him.
And your comment here is a possible permanent abduction?
Yep. You never know. We have a lot of people disappearing every year, and maybe it happens more than we think. And a lot of people don't. Who's going to believe them? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so this one is in Ottawa, Ontario,
Okay.
Canada. Date spring 1988, nighttime. An unusual object that flew into his apartment confronted the witness. It was about 2 feet in diameter and made a rather loud humming noise. It flew in a left to right motion. Soon after this incident, he was confronted by a being which he described as looking like a supreme military commander, Olympic athlete, and genius scientist all in one. He had short, almost wavy white hair trimmed around the ears and neck, red eyes, and was wearing what appeared to be a white, almost fluorescent silk or satin t-shirt with army-type shorts with 4 fluorescent insignia running down the right thigh. He also wore fluorescent sneakers which matched one of the colors of the bottom insignia. He reported numerous encounters with the above individual and was apparently taken into other realms. He remembers seeing what appeared to be spaceships. On another occasion, the witness saw what appeared to be 6 winged creatures suddenly appear in the sky and move swiftly upwards in a triple helical fashion. And after performing 2 loops, they suddenly vanished. On another occasion, he witnessed what the Jews have historically referred to as the Ark of the Covenant flying in the skies over where he lived. The appearance of the box-like object was an amber gold in color. Upon the top edges were 2 winged creatures whose wings slowly and surely moved in and out, with only the tips of their wings touching each other. After this incident, he remembers facing the being with the white hair and the red eyes. He smiled and spoke some words about the Earth's future, namely that global warming will destroy Earth's civilization, the atmosphere is running out of oxygen, that negative extraterrestrials have the world under control, and there may be a nuclear holocaust, but before it happens, the negative intelligences will land. Since the above incidents, he has had numerous dreams in which he has seen several types of aliens apparently working together. And I'll go ahead and share the screen here. This is what this little guy looks like.
Not exactly. It was different. This is more like a gray, but I this incident was sent to me directly by the witness. I spoke to him on the phone. I don't know. There's some kind of religious angle to his incident, but again, there's so many cases in which the aliens speak about coming catastrophes or global warming, and so you never know.
I noticed in particular that this one, rather than the normal warnings about nuclear holocaust and showing holographic descriptions of the Earth blowing up, this one specifically mentioned the end of the world because of global warming.
Right.
And this is something that's a little bit different, and that is something that's kind of close to my heart because I've done a lot of research on that. And we're going to go ahead and do the giveaway at the regular time. But the mods have told me, Albert, that if we want to go a little long, that they're good with it.
I'm going to try, but like I said, today I've been
not feeling so well.
No. But next time I will. I just haven't been getting any sleep lately. For some reason, the dogs keep keeping me awake. Like I said, I'm alone here at the house. My wife is in California, so it's crazy here for me.
Okay.
So I'm sorry if I can't stay over. Maybe I'll try a little bit. But
you want me to take this next one?
The next one is also from Phil, and in the same area from the one before. Go ahead. Yeah. Did you Oh, then no, I'll take the next one. You read the last one before. Yeah,
Okay.
this is from Croton Falls in New York, March 13, 1988, 2200 hours. And that during that time there was a lot of close encounters there. A lot of them documented by Phil. The witness was driving home alone in a dark road surrounded by woods and a large reservoir when he noticed several bright white lights off to the left just above the reservoir. The witness continued on slowly until he stopped his car by a clearing. He then watched the lights approach and realized that they were connected by some type of very dark structure. As the object passed over his car, he looked up to see a huge triangular shaped object. The object only had light in the front, and the underside appeared to have sections that receded inward. Inside this area, he could see white flashes of light. Suddenly, the next thing he knew was he was back in the car and driving away from the area. Later, and after several restless nights, the witness was hypnotized and was able to recall that as the object passed directly over the vehicle, he was somehow levitated into the craft. Inside, he found himself lying on a table in a dark room. He was surrounded by several short gray beings with large round dark eyes. One of the beings was moving some type of instrument around his head. Another being inserted an object up in the witness's nostril. Later, he was escorted by one of the beings to a control panel. He was then let go and has the feeling that the beings will one day return. Like I said, this is from Phil and Brogno, UFO Universe, fall 1989. And remember that red color alien that you displayed earlier? I think that one belongs to this case here.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a spooky one anyway.
Right.
Okay.
The next one's interesting too.
Rio San Joaquin, Distrito Federal, Mexico. Date April 1988, nighttime. Arturo Peña Guerrera, who was involved in other encounters, was driving his vehicle late at night when he distinguished in the darkness a tall, pale, blonde-haired woman standing on a corner, apparently hitchhiking. The strange woman wore all black. He stopped and picked her up, thinking that the woman was searching for some kind of romantic venture. However, the strange woman suddenly called Arturo by his name and ordered him to cease all of his UFO activities or die. Stunned that the strange woman knew his name and of his UFO interest, he turned to her and she vanished in plain sight. Half a kilometer ahead, he saw the same woman standing on the side of the road and hitchhiking again. According to Arturo, she had a very macabre smile in her face. Afraid, Arturo didn't stop and accelerated, but he would find the very same strange woman standing at every corner. Suddenly, the woman stood in the middle of the street in front of the oncoming car. Arturo didn't stop and accelerated even more. Expecting a crash, Arturo was stunned when he drove straight through the woman, and as he did, the temperature inside the car became noticeably colder. He drove on and didn't see her again. Do you think this is a possible predecessor to the dark-eyed children phenomenon?
It could be. It could be a woman in black type encounter, like Redfern mentions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, women in black cases. You never know because the black-eyed kids didn't become popular till like 1990, 1996.
Comic he.
Oh, so he's okay.
I would
so
never
he knows.
have gotten it.
Right, okay. All righty. We go to the next one at a place called Las Bandas in Santiago del Estero, Argentina. April 4, 1988. Time is 16:30 hours. At a field called Las Carolinas, a Mr. Mitrich Mitre Milovich, 58, farmer, was working on the fields and had briefly sat down on a piece of hardwood when he suddenly heard an intense buzzing sound which stopped abruptly. At this point, he realized that he was completely paralyzed. At about 7 meters from him, he saw a transparent, semi-spherical object resting on the ground. Inside, he could see three entities wearing shiny green one-piece coveralls. The faces of the entities were elongated with Oriental-type eyes, and on their ears they wore a sort of flattened headset. The entities were about 1.4 to 1.5 meters in height. The object measured about 4 meters in diameter. Milovich thought to himself, "Who are these idiots?" and thought he heard a telepathic answer which said, we're not idiots. We come from very far to visit our mother Earth." The telepathic voice then added, "We left Earth 9,000 years ago. You're not the first human we met, but you are not going to remember. Our memory will be erased from your mind." I guess it wasn't. At that moment, there appeared flashing lights on what appeared to be belts around their waist. These lights will blink on and off. He also thought he heard a dialogue between the entities which said, "His mind is different." At this point, Milovich began to hear a loud sound similar to a telegraph and was ordered to close his eyes. However, he immediately opened them and saw a bright flash of light and everything vanished. After the incident, Milovich's eyes were watery. He had never suffered from that condition before. The weather had been clear and visibility had been optimal that day. Weird case. This is again from Carlos Ferguson from his book.
Yeah, definitely a weird one.
They say they used to live on Earth before. Who knows? I know there's been ancient civilizations here on Earth that have been destroyed before ours.
Yeah,
pretty sure.
Like Atlantis, an antediluvian civilization.
Yeah.
So this next case comes from Davidstow Airfield in Cornwall, England. The date, summer 1988 at nighttime. Julia Jules Quinn decided to go out for a drive to Davidstow Airfield one evening with a friend, hoping to see something out of the ordinary, bearing in mind its spooky reputation. After locating the Davidstow Lookout Tower, which was constructed in World War II, they parked and had their lights on, and there was a full moon. All of a sudden, 12 sheep came running up close to the right-hand side of the tower. She was trying to figure out what had frightened them when, without any warning, something on two legs appeared and ran past them on the left-hand side of the tower. It was a couple of 100 yards away. It was taller than a man, probably 7 feet, she estimated. It had big, pointy ears and had dark brown, wiry hair covering its body. It stood there for at least 10 seconds, not on all fours, but on 2 legs. The sheep then ran away and were quickly followed by the creature. It had a strange face like a wolf rather than the popular illustration of the beast of Bodmin. The jaw was very long. And I'm wondering if this is a possible chupacabra.
Sounds to me like maybe a dog man or a wolfman, a wolf type bipedal, a mixture between a human and a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
A werewolf? Who knows?
Yeah.
In England, there's been a lot of cases in which similar reports of wolf-like bipedal creatures. This is from John Hansen and Don Holloway in their book series Haunted Skies, the Encyclopedia of British UFOs, Volume 5. Oh, yeah, they mentioned that case there. All right, now we go to Ireland, a place called Glen Malure Valley, Wicklow, Ireland. Summer 1988 evening, the main witness and a friend who were staying in an isolated country area with their families had gone out for a walk and a cigarette. Some distance down the road, both men stopped dead in their tracks when they looked into a field beside the road. With the faint light of some nearby farmhouses, they could make up a large disc sitting in the field, quite close to the gate beside them. Both men became terrified as lights began to flash all over the object. They ran back to their home. The next evening, several others joined the two men for a walk past the same field. As they neared the field, they all noticed a small figure in overalls or coveralls at the top of a telephone pole, examining the apparatus closely. They all walked by and suddenly stopped, realizing the diminutive stature of the stranger, and the fact that it was a holiday and they were miles from any telephone office or depot. They all turned around, but the small man had already vanished, and could not be seen either hiding in the hedge or crossing the open field. So we are assuming that this little guy was connected to the UFO they saw the day before.
Mm-hmm.
This is from the Irish UFO ET Paranormal Research Association.
I'm not sure why I get all the French cases, but I was told my pronunciation in French was very good. This comes from Couac de Aude, France. The date, June 3rd, 1988, at 22:35 hours. The witness, Mr. Jean-Claude Alliette, was riding his moped between Narbonne and Couac when he had the impression that something was trying to overtake him on his right. He turned his head and then saw four little men measuring about 1 meter high who, 2 by 2, hovered at his height. He perceived a kind of chirping between them. Frightened, the witness accelerated to 80 kilometers an hour, but soon realized the beings followed him and were staying at his height. He described the beings as wearing overalls of a strange blue color. Their arms seemed glued to their bodies, and their legs remained straight and seemed not to touch the ground. They were not wearing helmets, but he couldn't see the color of their hair or of their skin. On the other hand, he clearly saw their almond-shaped eyes stretching toward the temples and two holes in place of the nose. At one point, one of the beings called out to the witness 4 times, telling him, "Stop." Then the 4 beings passed the witness at an estimated speed of 100 kilometers an hour and then disappeared without slowing down on a path to the right of the road. The witness continued on his way at full speed to Couac.
This is from the French research group Tau Study, number 22. Okay, that's the newsletter, December 1980. Investigated by Mr. M. Pech. Weird. Well, I try to put all weird cases here, so. The next one was personal investigation here in South Florida, Miami Lakes, Dade County, Florida, late summer 1989. Night, the witness, who lived near an old nuclear missile base, it was a missile site up in North Dade, suddenly woke up to a tremendous noise in her bedroom. The house felt like it was shaking, and an extraordinarily strong wind was coming in through the previously closed window. She was unable to move, even as something told her to look out the window. She was able to remember a brief details of having apparently visited an underwater location where she, along with other humans, were made to cross what appeared to be a pool of water that had steps leading out of it. After walking through a passage, a short, heavy-set being wearing some kind of peculiar outfit appeared. For some reason, the witness thought this being as somewhat comical. This being spoke to the witness and the others, possibly telling them about future events, but was then told that they will be unable to remember the conversation. And I had the same question: why would they mention possible events if they were not able to remember? But it seems like this lady was able to remember part of it, at least, or what happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a weird one.
Yeah.
This one comes from Boyne City, Michigan, in fall of 1989 during the morning. BR was walking her dog Duke, a German Shepherd Malamute Husky mix, through a track of cleared forest that went through blackberry and raspberry bushes, some parts of which were heavily wooded. Suddenly, the dog uncharacteristically stopped and stared behind them. After a minute, BR continued along and pulled on Duke's chain to get him to come along. The witness even called his name, but the dog would not budge. At this point, BR thought that whatever animal he had seen had not run off yet, so BR turned and looked. To her astonishment, she spotted 3 white humanoid figures off in the woods. They appeared to be completely white in color, without any visible features, and human in shape, and not all the same height. She watched as they simply walked and disappeared behind some trees. Strangely, the trees were not thick enough for them to completely hide behind, but they had completely vanished, as if employing some form of invisibility. In a state of shock, BR immediately pulled on the chain and again urged Duke to come along. This time he immediately got up and walked along as if nothing at all had occurred out of the ordinary. BR made a hasty retreat, constantly looking over her shoulders. The witness never again felt comfortable in that area of the woods after the incident, but felt that the humanoids were not hostile in nature. And it says here that this is direct from the witness.
Yeah, I got this directly from her. I have some correspondence with her. So it seems like these entities, whoever they were, went through exited throughout some kind of portal behind the trees. Yeah. Okay. The next one, we go to a place called in Hungary, Ketsoproni in Hungary, autumn 1989, midnight. Catherine, a senior employee at a local IT company, was on her way home late one night. She was entirely alone on the road when she saw a huge object hovering just above the street ahead. She felt confused, and her next memory was of being inside a strange circular, white, untidy room surrounded by several short, huge, black-eyed beings. Still in the car, she was frightened to death and was unable to move. She tried, but her body would not obey her. Soon, several of the creatures gently removed her from her vehicle, and then laid her on a table, her arms and legs securely fastened. A bitter fluid was then poured into her mouth, and she lost consciousness. Her next conscious memory was of being back in the vehicle and watching the UFO rising silently from the ground. She believes that the experience totally ruined her life, as her family and friends ridiculed her. I heard that before. She suffered from a serious health problem since the incident and experienced strange episodes in which she feels like dressing up and going to different places in the city. However, she always ends up back in her house.
Weird.
So this is you could say this is sort of a negative encounter. This from a Hungarian a Hungarian researcher, Kriston Endre. He's written a lot about UFO encounters there in Hungary. My eyes are really bothering me.
Now this one comes from Capilla del Monte, Cordoba, Argentina.
That's an area where there's also a lot of activity there, like
September
Manchester.
1989 during the afternoon. While battling a fierce forest fire in the area, several of the firemen realized that some of the fires were being set intentionally at different locations. While searching the area, some of the men noticed a tall human figure, all dressed in black, who appeared to be the culprit. 3 of the strongest and best firemen were determined to confront this bizarre subject. While looking for the stranger, the men noticed him at about 50 meters from their position. Armed with machetes and other equipment, the 3 men headed immediately toward the stranger. As they got to several meters of the stranger, they noticed that it appeared to be a man dressed completely in black, wearing a black cape and a wide-brimmed hat of the same color. Once he noticed the fireman, the stranger took off running at great speed through the woods toward a nearby creek. According to the men, the black-clad subject moved at an incredible and inhuman pace. The chase ended at the edge of a cliff as the stranger made a prodigious leap and disappeared on the other side into the woods. The stunned firemen realized that the stranger had jumped from a cliff almost 80 meters in height. They lost sight of the stranger as he disappeared into a nearby cave. Still stunned and unable to comprehend how this person had survived the leap, the three firemen returned to the base and informed their superiors what had occurred. Soon after they informed their superiors, military personnel were summoned to the area. The enigmatic figure was seen again by fire and military personnel standing on top of a hill, apparently observing their operations. And I'll let you pronounce the source.
Source is Mario Gustavo Guevara. He wrote a short article and translated to Strange and Fantastic Incidents at Capilla del Monte, Argentina, which is, like I said, an area has been a lot of incidents similar to Munchausen in nature. Okay, so do I go to the next one here? This happened 10 miles west of Ruth, Nevada, September 1989 at night. The witnesses were driving across the middle of Nevada. I was there recently on U.S. Highway 50 when they stopped for the night and pulled off the road into a barely discernible dirt road. The driver drove the van a short distance on the road, just far enough so that they couldn't be viewed from the highway or be bothered by the lights and sounds of any passing vehicle. They rolled back the front seats and went to sleep. One of the men then experienced a very lucid dream. A human-sized alien male with pale green skin and long dark hair appeared in the dream. He wore a headband with what looked like two purplish feathers pointing straight up from the back of his headband. He telepathically told the witness that he was from a race of alien beings living deep in the Amazon jungle, where they had a base. I heard that before. He then pointed a metallic pewter-colored donut-shaped piece of technology or object with a perfectly clear, deep-colored amethyst crystal projecting from one of the sides of the device. The witness has since come to know that the donut shape is called a torus, the object that was pointed at him. The torus was about 14 to 15 inches in diameter and about 4 to 5 inches thick. The amethyst was about 5 to 6 inches long and about 2 inches wide. It was perfectly shaped. The torus also had thin but not sharp raised half-inch wide metal blades of varying length running at random perpendicular angles to one another, but none of them touching any of the others. The witness has done his best to depict the apparatus. Supposedly he drew it. I didn't send you the image, but there is an image of the apparatus. The entity, while holding the torus with both hands, touched the pointed tip of the crystal to the right temple of the witness' head. His brain was immediately and with extreme computer-like speed filling up with all the knowledge of the entire universe, according to him. Most amazingly was his feeling of bliss and peacefulness that accompanied this information download. The information kept coming, and he felt overwhelmed by the sheer speed and seemingly endless volume of information. It was stream information overload, and he had to use his hand to push the object away from his head. He then woke up. Since it was a very warm desert night, they had the windows rolled down in the van. His partner was asleep in the passenger seat, and he was in the driver's seat. Without getting out of the van, he looked up at the vast array of beautiful stars. with absolutely no human lights anywhere to interfere. It was simply beautiful beyond words. He gazed almost directly straight up above him and noticed what he thought were three stars that formed the constellation Orion's belt. Then it occurred to him that Orion was a winter constellation and not a summer constellation. The instant that he had that thought, the middle star of the belt ascended into space in a straight line like a meteor. He has had four other UFO events in his life, but this one remains the most intense for him. This is from
I've heard from abductees that this is called a whole concept thought transfer, that kind of download.
I heard of that before many times also.
Yeah. And this is also a MUFON case, right?
Yeah. There's something similar happened to me when I was asleep. I had sort of a dream that I was like rushing out of my body at a huge speed. It was incredible. And I kind of woke up and it felt like it was real. Like something really had happened. So.
Okay, let's get through this last one because I think this one is really interesting.
Okay.
Location is Rock Creek Canyon, Colorado. The date, September 6th, 1989 at 10 a.m. Bow hunter Juan Maestas was quietly stalking a herd of young elk uphill in a wooded area when he heard a twig snap to his left. He froze in his tracks. He turned his eyes to look at the source of the noise and was stunned to see a fat, ugly little guy about 3 feet tall who turned at the same instant and stared at him. The little man was about 50 feet away next to a tall pine tree. As they locked eyes, Maestas was able to discern the little man's wrinkled forehead, a clean-shaven face, and pink-hued skin. He was wearing what appeared to be green overalls with suspenders and a flat-topped hat. His hair was reddish and was sticking out from underneath the cap, which was green. He had little eyes that seemed red and bloodshot. The little man sort of gave Maestas a smile and suddenly darted behind a tree. Maestas quickly ran to the spot, but the little man had totally disappeared. 2 weeks earlier, awfully close to the same location, a family of 5 on a picnic had witnessed the same or remarkable similar entity that was also dressed in green overalls and a hat. And the source is Christopher O'Brien from his book Enter the Valley.
Enter the Valley, yes.
And his comments is, you tell me, what is a leprechaun doing in Colorado? And I'll have to ask Chris about this next time he's on the show.
Yeah.
He's been on the show a few times before.
That's one of the most interesting cases there from his book. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and bring on Darius Munchausen. Hello, Darius.
Hey, gentlemen.
How you
Hi.
doing?
Hey, Albert, thanks for coming back.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you.
Yeah, all right, make sure I got... There we go. Okay, so I believe all names are in for the wheel.
Okay.
Here's the book right
We have 6 names this week.
Okay.
Alrighty, then.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right.
Let's give it a spin.
Oh!
What?
Oh, Warachi.
Whoa.
Congratulations, Warachi.
That's great. And Mr. MH has won too much already.
Congratulations.
So, Warachi, I will need you to drop me a line here.
Can we get that book?
Or here. And then I will get your information to Albert. And
here's
congratulations.
the book.
There's the book.
So
Thank you, Darius, for helping.
thank you.
Oh yeah. Well, then thank you for doing the show, and of course, thank Albert for being here, and thank everyone
You're
for
welcome.
joining us.
Yeah, it was a great show, and I wanted to go a little bit longer, but
No, feel free to go to the additional cases, but I do have to get some rest. Like I said, I haven't been feeling well today.
I hear you. I hear you.
My eyes are
I
looking
had
my
the
eyes.
same thing yesterday. I was up for
So-
36 hours,
Oh,
so I feel your pain.
36 hours in a row. Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. You guys take care.
Okay.
We'll see you next time. Send me the information so Mr. Warachi gets his book.
I sure will. Thanks a lot, Albert.
Take
and
care.
We'll see you next time.
We'll see you.
All right. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks, everybody. Gunga Jin and everybody that's in the chat, was in the chat, and of course, all the mods and Mr. Munchausen.
Great show.
And thank you. I think so too. And we'll see you again next week. And until then, it's Cardinal Sin out.